Have you ever wondered how the conflict in Gaza began? It's a complex tapestry, woven with historical events, key players and underlying issues that have coalesced into a war that has captured the world's attention. Let's start at the very beginning. The modern conflict in Gaza has its roots in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with the rise of two national movements, Zionism and Palestinian nationalism. Both were responses to the pressures of modernity, and both laid claim to the same lands. The establishment of Israel in 1948 escalated these tensions into a full-blown conflict, with the displacement of Palestinian Arab communities sparking what is known today as the Nakba, or catastrophe. Fast forward to the year 2007, and we witness a significant shift in the political landscape of Gaza. Hamas, a Palestinian political and military organization, took control of the Gaza Strip. This led to a blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt, severely restricting the movement of people and goods into and out of Gaza. This blockade has had a profound impact on the living conditions in Gaza, leading to widespread poverty and unemployment. The year 2021 marked another escalation in the conflict, with a series of events triggering an 11-day war between Israel and Hamas. The proposed eviction of Palestinian families in East Jerusalem, coupled with police raids on the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan, sparked widespread protests and violence. In response, Hamas fired rockets into Israel, and Israel retaliated with airstrikes on Gaza. This brings us to the start of the recent Gaza war. Let's unfold the sequence of events that escalated into the recent Gaza war. It all began with a clash of interests that spiraled into a full-blown conflict. On one side, we have the Israeli government, determined to protect its territory and citizens. On the other, the Palestinian resistance, fueled by a burning desire for sovereignty. The conflict kicked off with trade union activists and international influencers calling for a global strike in response to Israel's attacks on Gaza. This was a pivotal moment that marked the beginning of a series of escalating events. Soon after, in Guernica, Spain, protesters formed the Palestinian flag as an air raid siren blared, a symbolic gesture of solidarity with the Palestinians. Meanwhile, analysts suggest that a reliance on high-tech tools led to complacency, allowing Hamas fighters to enter Israel. This marked a significant turning point in the conflict. Then came a brief respite. A top UN official stated that a recent 7-day truce demonstrated that humanitarian aid could be delivered under certain conditions. However, the calm was fleeting. As tensions flared, the Biden administration sought approval from Congress for a larger sale of 14,000 rounds of shells. This move indicated a potential escalation in the conflict. The government also considered expelling an ambassador as disputes over waters intensified. Following this, the war took a turn for the worse. After 11 days of hostilities, both Israel and Palestine began assessing the damages. In Gaza, thousands of housing units were damaged or destroyed, power supply dwindled, and the bombardments caused millions in damage to factories, the energy sector, and agriculture. Palestinians found themselves with limited or no access to water facilities, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis. In Israel, the economy contracted significantly due to the pandemic, and the recent hostilities threatened to further hinder economic recovery. Rockets from Gaza disrupted trade and shipping, causing further disruptions and economic losses. This escalation in violence led to devastating consequences. Ever wondered what the cost of war is? Let's delve into the financial and human costs of the Gaza war. The financial toll of war is often astronomical, but the Gaza conflict is a particularly stark example. Post-conflict assessments reveal staggering numbers. In Gaza alone, the bombardments damaged 16,800 housing units, and 1,000 were completely obliterated. This destruction has reduced power supply to a mere 3 to 4 hours a day, a significant drop from the previous average of 12 hours. The war also brought about an estimated $40 million worth of damage to factories and industrial facilities, and $22 million to the energy sector. The agriculture sector wasn't spared either, suffering a loss of $27 million. These figures only scratch the surface of the economic devastation. The human costs are equally, if not more, tragic. With the destruction of water facilities, Palestinians now have limited or no access to water, exacerbating an already severe humanitarian crisis. The United Nations and aid groups have had to appeal for additional funding to address urgent humanitarian needs in Gaza and the West Bank. The war has had a ripple effect on Israel's economy as well. The economy, which had already contracted by 6.5% in the first quarter due to the pandemic, suffered further losses. The loss to the economy from just 3 days in May reached $166 million, excluding damage to factories. Trade and shipping disruptions, and the suspension of international flights to Israel's main airport have added to the economic strain. The war has also disrupted religious traditions. Soaring prices of animal feed, a consequence of the conflict, have led to higher prices for sacrificial animals during the Eid al-Adha festival. This has made it difficult for people to afford the tradition of sacrificing animals during the holiday. So, when we talk about the cost of war, it's more than just the financial toll. It's about the loss of homes, the disruption of lives, the strain on resources, and the tearing of the social fabric. It's clear the cost of this war is far more than just financial. What role does the US play in this conflict? The United States has historically been deeply involved in the Middle East, and the recent conflict in Gaza is no exception. As a significant political and financial ally of Israel, the US has had a direct impact on the situation on the ground. Let's start with the financial involvement. It's no secret that the United States is one of Israel's largest benefactors. Every year, billions of dollars in aid flow from the US to Israel, a portion of which goes towards military expenditure. This financial backing is a cornerstone of Israel's defense strategy and has been a point of contention for those arguing that US resources could be better spent elsewhere. Beyond financial support, the US holds considerable political influence. It often uses its diplomatic clout to back Israel in international forums, like the United Nations. This political support helps shape the narrative surrounding the conflict and influences how other nations respond. However, this involvement is not without controversy. Critics argue that the US should take a more neutral stance, suggesting that its current position may inadvertently prolong the conflict. They contend that US involvement, particularly its financial support, can indirectly contribute to the violence on the ground. Furthermore, some argue that the US's role can complicate peace negotiations. With the US seen as heavily favoring one side, it can be challenging for it to act as an unbiased mediator in peace talks. This perception can hinder the chances of a fair and lasting resolution being reached. However, supporters of US involvement argue that its role is vital for maintaining stability in the region. They claim that US support for Israel acts as a deterrent against potential aggression from other regional actors. Regardless of where one stands on the issue, it's clear that the US's involvement in the conflict is complex and multi-layered. Its influence can be felt on both a political and financial level, and its role is a subject of ongoing debate. The US's role in the conflict is complex and controversial. Will this ever end? What does the future hold for Gaza? As we look ahead, the possibilities are as varied as they are uncertain. One scenario is the potential for peace. There are glimmers of hope, like the recent 7-day truce that demonstrated humanitarian aid can be delivered under certain conditions. Such instances show that, under the right circumstances, a ceasefire can hold, and much-needed aid can reach the people who need it most. However, there's also the risk of continued conflict. The tensions that have been simmering for decades are not easily resolved, and the recent conflict has only served to deepen divisions, making the path to peace even more challenging. The reliance on high-tech tools has led to complacency, allowing fighters to infiltrate and disrupt any semblance of peace. There's also the potential for further escalation. As we've seen, international influencers and trade union activists are calling for global strikes in response to the attacks on Gaza, which could potentially heighten tensions on a global scale. And let's not forget the role of international mediation and humanitarian aid. The International Committee of the Red Cross has called for de-escalation and adherence to the rules of war, while the United Nations and aid groups are appealing for additional funding to address urgent humanitarian needs in Gaza and the West Bank. These efforts, though vital, are often hampered by the complexities of the conflict and the differing interests of the various players involved. So, as we look to the future, the picture is far from clear. It's a complex mosaic of hope and despair, peace and conflict, aid and obstruction. Only time will tell how this situation will unfold, but one thing is certain: the people of Gaza deserve peace. Let's recap what we've learned. The conflict in Gaza traces its roots to long-standing territorial disputes. The war, marked by significant events, has resulted in substantial costs, with thousands of homes destroyed and an alarming impact on the economy. US involvement, though controversial, has seen attempts to broker peace and provide humanitarian aid. Yet, the future remains uncertain, clouded by unresolved issues and potential escalations. We hope this video has provided a clearer understanding of the complex and tragic situation in Gaza.